Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a privilege to moderate this session on an exciting topic, building institutional capacity to sustain professional excellence. I'm joined by fellow panel members. On my left, I am joined by Mr. Stephane Bessadi, who is Senior Procurement Specialist at Asian Development Bank. He's based since 2023 in ADB Resident Mission in India, New Delhi, to manage a portfolio which is exceeding 10 billion US dollars and delivering innovative and sustainable solutions which are aligned with ADB's strategy 2030. He also supports country operations and institutional capacity building across sovereign and non-sovereign operations. Mr. Bessadi has a master's degree in engineering from Agro-Paris Tech, France, and a master's degree in economics from Aix-Marseille School of Economics, France. It's good to have you with us, Stephane, and I would like to hear your views from the larger MDB perspective. On my right, I'm joined by Mr. Jonathan Cheung, who is an enthusiastic senior financial services, procurement and supply chain practitioner and mentor with 40 years of experience across Asia, US, UK, Europe and Canada. He has deep experience advising senior management at leading institutions on business process, technology related challenges, as well as in-depth practical experience on information technology, financial and procurement supply chain processes. In his current role, Jonathan is General Manager Asia for Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. Jonathan is responsible for expansion of CIPS community and membership base, as well as the promotion of CIPS for business product and services, CIPS qualification and skills training program across 25 plus Asia countries in near and medium term. Mr. Jonathan has supported CIPS as a volunteer for past 11 years and currently serving as CIPS Asian advisor for the last 2 years. Mr. Jonathan has been CIPS chair for CIPS Excellence in Procurement and Supply Asia Awards for past 5 years. In his previous roles, Mr. Jonathan was Principal Advisor and Head of Digital Procurement Advisory for BDO Singapore, CEO of the ESG Institute, which is a first professional institute that is focusing on ESG device standards and professional development, and Executive or Regional Head of Citibank Strategic Sourcing and Procurement Services covering 17 countries across Asia Pacific. He has been working for MNCs including companies like EDS, American Express, PwC Consulting, Capco, HP, KPMG as their Senior Financial Service Industry Global or Regional Director. Mr. Jonathan is currently a Chartered Fellow, FCIPS of Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, licensed CIPS Procurement Excellence Program Assessor, Certified Trainer Assessor of CIPS Corporate Awards and Procurement Skills Training Program, a member of British Computer Society and Chartered Professional, IT Professional and Certified CITP Assessor. He is also the Fellow of Supply Chain Asia and Senior Member of Singapore Computer Society. Nice to have you with us, Jonathan, for this important session, which is very closely linked to the larger mandate of CIPS. And ladies and gentlemen, we also had initially Mr. Ian Taylor, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Tech Giant, supposed to join us on the panel. However, for some reasons, he's not able to make it. But we have Mr. Jonathan kindly agreeing to represent Tech Giant as well for this panel discussion. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Jonathan. Next, on my far right, I have Ms. Sizi Qolohle, who is Chief Director, Governance, Monitoring and Compliance at National Treasury. Ms. Sizi is a seasoned public sector executive with over 3 decades of experience spanning pharmacy, health system strengthening, project management and supply chain governance. She currently serves as Chief Director, Governance, Monitoring and Compliance at National Treasury, where she leads implementation and oversight of supply chain management frameworks across all spheres of government, ensuring compliance, accountability and good governance. Her career highlight includes spearheading high-impact procurement reforms, overseeing multi-billion rand transversal contract, and contributing to major national initiatives. Earlier in her career, she held leadership roles at Department of Health, Management Science for health, and Senexis, where she managed large-scale health projects, including pharmaceutical reforms and clinical trials. Academically, Ms. Sizi holds a MBA and honors in business administration from University of Stellenbosch, a Bachelor of Pharmacy, and an advanced program in project management from University of Pretoria, complemented by numerous specialist certifications. She is a registered member of South African Pharmacy Council and Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply. Ms. Sizi is widely respected for her expertise in governance and procurement reforms and health system management, and is committed to strengthening public service delivery through ethical leadership and sustainable supply chain practices. Ms. Sizi, we are really glad to have you as part of the panel. And I must say that the country context of South Africa is not very different from India, so I'm sure that the audience would get benefited from your experience. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, let me quickly introduce the topic for this particular panel discussion, which is building institutional capacity to sustain professional excellence. When the term capacity building comes across, it is interpreted in a wide variety of manners. Some interpret it as one of a training or a workshop, whereas there is a much comprehensive and a larger interpretation which goes into building the capacity of institutions. Especially the interpretation of the term continues to evolve with the changing times, and it has a multi-dimensional interpretation, but at the same time, I think the three dimensions carry most weightage when we are talking about capacity building from an institutional perspective. The first one is really about the knowledge systems. The institutions needs to have very sound knowledge systems, which are self-sustaining. These are not reliant on individual knowledges. Individuals may come and go, but the system should be self-sustaining. They should respond and continue to perform. The another dimension is about the continuous improvement. I think most of us will appreciate the fact that after COVID, there has been a high degree of uncertainty. The environment around us is continuously changing, and there is a demand for continuously adapting to this changing environment. So this really requires a continuous learning, continuous improvement at an institutional level. And this is not only a choice, but now this has to be done in order to stay current with the changing environment. And the third dimension, I would say, is a very important one, which is about the risk appetite, which is a very deliberate issue in terms of empowering the teams and at the same time ensuring there is equally balanced with accountability. Because at the end of the day, we want our teams to make complex decisions. So they should be empowered. They should be empowered to exercise their professional judgment. But this at the same time should also be balanced through accountability. So with that, let me get started with the panel discussion. My very first question is for Mr. Stephane Bessadi, and the question is, based on the larger global experience that ADB has, what institutional capabilities most clearly differentiate procurement systems that sustain professional excellence from those that struggle with implementation and compliance over time? As by way of ADB operations, you would have experienced that there are institutes with wide spectrum of capacities. On the one end of the spectrum, you have the institutes who have embedded the procurement excellence in their systems, whereas on the other end of the spectrum, there are institutes who are in a way struggling with the implementation and compliance. So what are the really driving factors? What are the success factors which really helps an institute to scale up its capacities for the excellence? Over to you, Mr. Bessadi, your views on that.
Thank you very much, Robin, for these very interesting questions. Before to start, I would like to thank again Aima for the very fruitful partnership we are having since a few years now. So with ADB, you know, we are celebrating now more than 60 years of partnership with India, and of course, it's thanks to many projects and which have been implemented so far in all the states in India. And of course, this project benefited, as it was reminded yesterday by Arti, our deputy country director, and Jesper, our procurement director, benefited from a very long procurement discussion and preparation. So it's very, I think we can all agree that maybe procurement was a few years ago a more hidden function, if I may say, and we can see that since few months it's really becoming a very hot and how to say, attractive topic in the media and everywhere. My personal experience, either in the private sector or also in the public sector, is that maybe a few years ago, when you say to someone, okay, you will do a career in procurement, well, he was he was not so excited in a way. I work, for example, in the water industry, and I may say that it was more the operations who were a little bit the area which was really interesting for everybody. I think it has changed a lot, and everybody in private sector institution, in government, everywhere, has realized that this hidden function is becoming more and more important, and there is also much more communication around all these thematics. So this being said, coming back to your question, how we can compare maybe and take lessons from the different level of maturity of the procurement system in different parts of the world and in India. I think it's a very important question. To compare a little bit to the sector practice, we can see that sometime in water industry, in energy industry, you have different level of maturity of the institution, which are more generally assessed. I think the lessons are very well known. I think in the procurement, we still have to build that. It's my thinking, and it's what I will try to answer in few minutes. But I think it's really something we should, I feel, formalize more to be able to take the good lessons from different states and from different countries. My first thinking is, first of all, is you need to have a strategic document and strategic principle that you would like to adhere to. Again, I think procurement has changed a lot this last year, and I feel that all the organizations have moved from very prescriptive regulation to principle-based regulation. So I think it was also reminded yesterday by his high-level representative from Department of Expenditure, that you, on the day-to-day, you should address your daily work based on key principle. So first you have to define this key principle. This being said, the other very important function, I think, which has to be developed, is to have a strategic and advanced preparation. So for me, there is no procurement if you don't have the time to deliver and to prepare it. So it means that you need to have, again, in your process, it's very important. You need to have in your business process, it has to be defined somewhere. So in ADB, for example, it's something we have introduced now 7 years ago, and it was really very well formalized. Now in all the project, we have a when we start to discuss about the project, we start to discuss about the procurement. So this is, for me, very important. If you start to discuss about the procurement when your project is already defined, it's already too late, because you have missed maybe very important aspect in your preparation, and then it will be complicated after to change the concept of your project without this procurement consideration. The other aspect, I think it's a key thematic, as it was just done by honorable representative before, by signing this MOU with SIPS, is the professionalization of the procurement. So I think in all the organization, you need to be able to develop a career, and it's very often, personally, it's what I ask when I meet an agency, and I start to work with this agency. I start to say, okay, can you show me your organization chart? And can you show me who is in charge of the procurement? Is it separated from the operation function? Are they certified? Are there people who are certified in procurement, or who have built their experience on the ground, who is also very good, but it's just understanding this aspect is very important. Understanding also what is the authority of the procurement. Do you have an independent procurement director who is able to take independent decision, or is it under the operation director? Similarly, do you have an independent audit review? Well, give an example. For example, in ADB, we have an independent evaluation department who is able to assess how were developed the process. And it's very important to have this independent review function to be able to assess and improve continually. Another aspect I would like to highlight, which is very important for me, is the interaction and the market outreach. I think we have today maybe 80% of or 50% of representatives from the private sector, and thanks to IMA, we are able to exchange together with government, with institution, and I think this market outreach is very important to have a fair dialogue, to be able also for us as institution to keep up to date with the latest techniques, with the latest approach, and to make sure that our procurement is relevant to what the private sector is developing. So I again, as an institution, I think you need to be able to have contact with the market regularly, and to be able to address, if needed, the needed change. So I would like to, maybe it's my final point, to come back also to your question. What is the difference between an organization which is having a successful procurement capacity to an organization who is more struggling? So in addition of all these points, I think you need to have an organization who is able, at the end of the day, to progress and to continually change. Meaning, once you have done, as I explained, these different reviews, these different audits, making sure that all your daily transactions are in line with your principle, you need to be able to correct when needed, and again, to change the rule of the game when it's needed. For example, these days we have the challenge in a way of the artificial intelligence. So what does it mean for the business? What do you have to change in terms of daily process? Because of course, it will help a lot in data recording, in tracking our activity, but it may also imply new rules to be introduced, new principle maybe that will need to be introduced to continue to develop an efficient procurement system. So I think this livability and this reactivity of the procurement system is very important. You need to be able to have a system which is being updated regularly and also benchmarked with other systems to be able to compare and to take the good lesson. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephane, for that wonderful insight. I think some of the key takeaways are, there is clearly a need to move away from treating procurement as a tactical function to more of a strategic function, because there is so much of untapped value. Definitely, there is a move towards the professionalization of procurement through various certifications and recognition that individuals with required knowledge, who are equipped with required knowledge, are entrusted for this important function. There has to be an institutional recognition and authority within the institutional framework to empower procurement. There has to be a continuous review system, which is, a reflection on whether there is a need for making changes. There is an appetite for continuous improvement and also a need for benchmarking with the market benchmarks, and finally being adaptive to the changing market, the changing supply market, how the changing market is now reorienting the various offerings, and how a purchasing entity can change its strategy to the changing market needs. I think these are very important insights. And also, I think one of the key takeaways that there are multiple dimensions where an institute really have to work. But I think the key takeaway, if we can use one term, that is proactively adapting to the changing environment. I think there are so many dimensions which requires you to continuously adapt, and the appetite to continuously adapt would be the key. So with that, let me move to my next panel member, Mr. Jonathan Cheung. Jonathan, my question to you is, since you are representing both SIPs and Tech Giant, and you are wearing two hats, so would appreciate your dual perspective on how can global professional standards like SIPs and advanced digital platforms, which are now coming up in every country, together strengthen institutional procurement capacity and governance. How the two professional standards and advanced digital platform can come together and contribute to the larger institutional procurement capacity in the larger governance framework. Your views on that, please.
Okay, thank you. So on behalf of Ian Taylor, who is the CEO of Tech Giant, he cannot be here. So I like to just say a few words, and he apologized, he's absent, and he is very, very keen to have follow-up session with you. And I do have their information, so please come to the SIP and Tech Giant booth to get a glimpse of what is Tech Giants about. So, but answer to your questions, okay? We are very strong. We SIP can give you global standard. We SIP can teach you certification, give you certified. But without the system, without technology, you cannot monitor and trace. So have to be coexist. The first thing I want to cover, both of them have to coexist. If you don't have the system, if you don't have that, you will not be able to track what we taught you about the global standard, what we teach you in our training and all this. So first of all is have to be coexist, cannot be like independent, cannot be there. So the second key point is risk-based sourcing. Yesterday as a panel that I was there, risk-based sourcing is one of the major part that transforming our capability to influence your respective organization. So risk is the key thing now. Risk-based sourcing. But you need technology to highlight to you in real time. The real time part is very important. to tell you, wow, this supplier just gone into challenge with ESG somewhere. And this is help you to do your job. So your category management plan going forward is not a static document anymore. It's not a plan. That you did it, you put it in your drawer, whatever, or you put it in the folder in your laptop or desktop. It's a active checking on you're depending on this supplier. So risk-based sourcing is one of the key things that capability-wise you need to build. And the other thing that I would like to add on is you need to look at how do you invest your return on investment. So that is where look for technology that will come up with the risk-based sourcing recommendation, but also identify potential saving to fund your investment. So this is where the combination of standard through technology, through looking at the result on your risk and resilient, then come up with recommendation to say, this is the funding that you can get to. So this is where the technology fund, when you look at the brochure, the technology fund approach that tech giant brought to the table is a very interesting concept. It could be up to 25% of your IT spend. So I know we spend a lot of time telling you risk-based sourcing, all this approach that I talked to you a lot the past 2 days. During break and during lunchtime, we talk about all this. It's not only for saving, but one of our key KPI as procurement professional, the CFO is still looking at our saving. So when you're doing your role to say, I employ the global standard, I employ this global framework, and SIP taught me about these certifications, and risk, and we can get some saving out of this. So I leave you with this quote. Being an old guy, I have to read something because this is a very complex quote. But I like okay. Future-ready procurement is built on fusion of global professional standard, intelligent data platform, risk-based sourcing, and sustainable technology investment. Together, they create institutes capability of delivering integrity value, resilient in a world defined by a constant change. So please, I will share this quote with the organizer and you will all receive it. But this is something that I would like you to walk away today. Remember this quote. Okay. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. That's a very important aspect about the risk-based sourcing and very much aligned with the category management strategies. I fully agree that there is clearly a need to focus on the bottom line, that how procurement can contribute in terms of saving the resources, but at the same time ensuring that within the fiscal constraints that most of the public procurement institutions operate, how they can maximize the value delivery, how they can get most out of the every rupee or every dollar spent. So thank you very much for that insight. My next question is for Ms. Sizi, and this is about the experience from the point of view of South Africa. How can procurement institutions move beyond individual capacity building to embed professional excellence at organization level, particularly through governance frameworks, compliance mechanism, and leadership accountability? So we all are aware of individual capacity buildings, but it is not always given that individual capacity building would lead to an institutional capacity building. Of course, it is a contributing factor, but there are many other variables in play. So we'd like to hear your point of view in terms of how can these institutions move beyond individual capacity building to the institutional capacity building with the focus on governance framework, compliance, and leadership accountability. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Robin. First, I would like to thank the World Bank and EMA for the invitation. My Minister of Finance in South Africa, our Head of Department at National Treasury, our Director General, and the Chief Procurement Officer. This question is quite loaded. As you can see, it talks to governance frameworks, compliance, mechanisms, leadership, accountability, professionalization. I'll start by saying to move beyond individual capacity building and embed professional excellence at the organizational level. Procurement institutions in South Africa have been focusing, because this is a practical experience according to how the question has been framed. What have you been doing on strengthening governance frameworks, on compliance mechanisms, and leadership accountability? All those concepts all in one question. Firstly, governance frameworks. Firstly, you have to develop and implement a robust procurement policies that align with international best practices and local regulations. What do I mean by that? I think where we are in South Africa, as the question is about experiential learning or practice, we have a new Public Procurement Act that was assented in 2024, July. We are currently preparing regulations so that the PPA, that's how we call it, can be fully implemented. And what I like about the PPA that we have now, it is putting together all spheres of government. I heard yesterday, I think we are more or less configured the same way. In India, I heard you talking about states. We have 9 provinces. I think I could equate that to states. We have about plus minus 44 national departments and their entities. We have a local government and what you call municipalities, about 278 of those. I think all institutions, because we're talking about not capacitating individuals, but capacitating institutions and organizations. So I think all in all, we've got about plus minus 1,000 organizations that we need to capacitate time and again and to bring them up to speed as to what is happening. So we had the road shows insofar as the PPA to sort of empower and educate what the new PPA is going to be all about. But I think what I like about the new PPA is that the regulations are very succinct. I can't talk much about the regulations. They are still under development, but we are putting our inputs as there's a process, as we know, like in any legislation and any government, there's a process. So we're at that process of having our inputs into the regulations. But the greatest thing when it comes to capacity building, which was going to be sort of a hindrance in terms of how professionalization was going to be undertaken, was that we needed an enabling regulatory and policy framework. But lucky enough, there was a foresight, because in the PPA, professionalization is enacted. So now we are going to withdraw the process of professionalization from the Act. So it has sort of cut down the red tape. And then secondly, I talk about establish clear roles and responsibilities for procurement officials with a focus on segregation of duties. Here I'm going to be talking about this pet project called SEM Public Professionalization. As we know, I think the moderator did mention that we must develop systems that are lasting. to have such systems or develop any other system, it takes a while. There was a process that was started somewhere, but I'm going to leave that process, not for this audience. But I think we've gained traction since 2024 in terms of professionalization, and perhaps we are also gaining momentum out of the time that we have lost, because through our partners, the World Bank included, GIZ, FACET, some of the national departments, National School of Government. I will stand up and just take you through the learning pathways that the National School of Government is developing. So we had a very successful public SEM procurement professionalization that we had in last November. As I was flying down or up to India on that Monday, the team that I had in terms of the project development, in terms of the framework for professionalization, they were busy collating and consolidating all what was done in that summit, so that we can produce a draft framework that is due to be submitted to our National Director General. And I think somewhere, when it comes to leadership and accountability, I'll talk about visible leadership, because professionalization now has taken a higher hierarchy within the South African procurement system, because National Treasury is leading professionalization, and it is in our annual procurement plan. So it means we must deliver. We have to deliver on the framework for professionalization. And then our other stakeholders, the Public Service Administration also is involved, because it sets standards. And we also had the AFDB, which is the African Development Bank, the academics, and anyone else that I may have forgotten, and the sponsors, the GIZ, together with the World Bank. We're very grateful, because it's just a very big project. And then when it comes to professionalization, there are a lot of issues that I will quickly talk through them. What I did some kind of a hybrid. I think yesterday someone was talking about the AI, the technology, and the humans. So I had to do a bit of hybrid. I become the human, and then I'll have to talk to the learning pathways through the slides, but I will indicate to the team when I come to that point. So, the professionalization of procurement officials is a key aspect of building a world-class procurement function. So we need professionalized individuals. We have certification programs that we are going to be building into this framework that National Treasury, together with its partner stakeholders, such as the National School of Government, is developing those national pathways, those learning pathways. And then we have competency frameworks. That's part of the learning pathways, to develop the frameworks that outline the expected skills, knowledge, and behaviors for procurement officials. I think yesterday I heard one of the speakers. They were saying, I think they were working in the bank, and then if I can say, raise your hands, I think there's a multitude and a variety of professionals that we have in here. I mean, you heard I'm a pharmacist by profession. Yes, there's a lot of procurement and supply chain in pharmacy, but I'm a fully fledged supply chain official now. So it's a diverse world that needs to be brought together through some streamlining, through some certification, through some training and development, to provide regular training. The workshops, we won't run away from them, Robin, and conferences like this one to enhance procurement skills and knowledge. Career pathing, establish clear career paths and progression opportunities for procurement professionals. Professional networks like this one. I had an engagement in the morning with one of the SIPS officials, and I did indicate, without going to details, that we need to be partnering with SIPS as South Africa, because within our environment, it's like SIPS operates in the private sector, but SIPS, as I listened to it today, and I know SIPS, what it is all about, when it comes to the part of having some inputs into the professionalization framework, then we need partners like SIPS. And at the end of the day, I think it's like the issues like the Ministry of Finance. There is no Ministry of Finance for public sector and for private sector. So much as we call it SCM public professionalization, I think it should grow to a wider degree, that it should just be South African SCM procurement professionalization that cuts across all spheres. So we need those networks. And then what are the benefits of professionalization? They include improved procurement outcomes. We heard about the bottlenecks in terms of cancelled bids and everything that was discussed yesterday. So when we had such professionals, we will have improved procurement outcomes. Professionalized procurement officials can drive better outcomes like cost saving and improved supplier relationships. Enhance credibility. Professional certifications and standards can enhance the credibility of procurement as a profession. Talent attraction and retention. Professionalization can attract and retain top talent in procurement. So at this point, I will just ask the team. I will also finish the other parts from the podium. Can you just, yes, the slides there is just how the learning pathways that we have defined are going to take place. We have structured, we will have to partner with higher education. We can take learning at various times and at different locations, and learners can learn in their communities. You can put the next slide, please, because I'm sure people will be given the slide at some other point. And then this next slide, we will do the continuous learning and professional development framework points. We will partner with higher education. We'll develop the CBT points. There needs to be coaching and mentoring and peer reviews that should be considered. There should be accreditation, and these are all the other areas that need the SEM professionals should be talking to, so that at the end of the day, we're talking to a unified professional, which is a public procurement SEM professional or a public SEM supply chain professional. So now moving into ensuring transparency and accountability through regular reporting and audits. In South Africa, we've got an Auditor General of South Africa that conducts regulatory audits through all spheres of government yearly, and then the audit outcomes, at times we do know that no one wants to be found on the other side of the law. So audit outcomes, there can be some areas where there needs to be elevation to our office, and the National Treasury and the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer acts as an arbiter in terms of the findings, whether it was real, whether it was like a misinterpretation of the statutes and the legislation. And then there's issues around a compliance mechanism. Robin has asked me a practical experience. The Chief Directorate that I lead, we have developed a tool. We needed to find a name for the tool because it was for compliance. It's a CREM tool. I also have to think about it. Compliance, risk assessment and monitoring tool. So that tool we have started to deploy to all those levels of government that I have mentioned. We've done the national level. We have also done the provinces or the states. We are about to do the local government. And what is it all about? It is about implementing effective compliance monitoring systems to track procurement processes. We saw some of the case studies, how they tracked the procurement processes, and identify areas of improvement. Conduct regular compliance audits, and take swift action on non-compliance. So we're talking about how not to capacitate an individual. So now we have capacitated a number of SCM professionals throughout those organizations. I don't have the numbers now, but I think the two spheres were about 14,000 plus officials that we have capacitated. You foster a culture of compliance through training and awareness programs. We do a competency framework, as I have mentioned. We also have to automate the tool, because the tool in it is got about, I think, about 800 questions. The institutions have to assess themselves throughout the year. You can do it in phased approach, and then it will give you your level. Can you please project the third slide? Yes. So that is what it is, the SCM compliance risk management. It's self-explanatory. It takes its mandate from the legislation, from SCM, from key processes. It includes risk management framework, compliance framework, and then it gives you that inverted triangle. And then the last slide, please. Yes. And then what does it do? So we do know that different institutions have different capacities and different levels. So you may have a startup level. It tells you what is it to be a startup and what do you need to identify yourself as. And then we have the developmental impact. The level 3 is the controlling of the environment up to the optimization. Optimization tells you that you are managing your SCM environment, your professional environment in terms of compliance, in terms of risk, in terms of assessing yourself, in terms of monitoring. So that is a practical tool that we have developed that is used across all institutions, or is going to be used across all institutions who are trying to get a circular to legislate it so as to make it a little bit compulsory. And I think then lastly, we have the accountability and leadership. When it comes to accountability and leadership, I have mentioned the law. The law comes from cabinet. So the cabinet has agreed that the Public Procurement Act should come across, should be unified, should be generic, and should be uniform. We also have what is termed NACEC, which is a National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council that is run from the Office of the Presidency and is premised on the principle of preventing corruption through robust governance, transparency, and accountability. And my department and ministry, the National Treasury Ministry of Finance, through the Office of the Director General and the Chief Procurement Officer, has mandated the OCPO, or the Chief Procurement Officer, to spearhead the SCM Public Professionalization project, which I have mentioned. So that is true leadership, that is leading from the front. And then you must also hold leaders accountable for procurement outcomes and take disciplinary action when necessary. I've mentioned the AGSA, where now there are issues around irregular audits, and when there is supposed to be consequence management where applicable, but we do try and resolve issues. And then I think lastly, we should encourage a culture of continuous improvement and innovation in procurement processes. I mean, we've mentioned that they should be hybrid in terms of technology, AI, and humans. We don't necessarily replace the other. So the National Treasury and its other various related divisions conduct regular SCM forums to address continuous improvement in procurement outcomes at institutional level. So with all these, we are attempting to create and live a system that is going to outlive all of us going into the future. I thank you.
Ms. Sizi, thank you very much for that comprehensive take. I think it has touched upon every single dimension of professionalization and capacity building at an institutional level. It was good to hear that close to 14,000 professionals have been capacitated through these efforts. And also particularly an important point of view because from the national treasury perspective, I think that's a bird's eye view on how things should be managed and how this initiative should be embedded into the acts and regulations so that, you know, they do find right kind of funding and eventually there is a high degree of seriousness in terms of implementing these initiatives. Let me also build on that by mentioning that when World Bank is financing a project, we also started realizing that there are certain institutes or there are certain entities where the capacity is on the lower side. While there was always an option of doing some capacity building by way of workshops or trainings, but this was still not filling up the gap. And through our own policy, we came up with a particular provision of hands-on implementation expanded support, which is actually meant that the World Bank staff or World Bank appointed consultant can go in the implementing agency office, sit with them, help them in terms of developing systems, processes, help them in terms of undertaking procurement processes with a clearly defined terms of reference where the decision making is always in the hands of the implementing agency. But this is where a lot of value has been delivered because in function like procurement, a lot of knowledge is tacit knowledge, which cannot be transferred by way of trainings and by way of workshops. It can only be transferred by way of working together. And this is something that has really yielded good results over last 10 years now because it was since 2016 when this provision was introduced. So yes, this has to be looked into the context of every single institute or entity that what are their specific needs and what is the best method to serve that need. So with that, let me now begin with the question and answers session. I already have a few questions coming in. So the first question.
Sorry, no, can I just add something? I think it was a very good example of what I mentioned regarding when you want to build an institution, you need to be able to have a system. So I think it's very nice that you develop your system. But or you can use the same, or you can develop your own system. But having a system where you can track the progress and have an assessment, and after identify the gaps, and after progress based on that. I think it's really a very good example that you demonstrate. So thank you for that. And one more thing I wanted to add also is on the psychological aspect also of the procurement sometime. And I think it's very interesting to see how individual level and general level are linked. For example, merit point criteria. I think it was or rated criteria which are used, or quality criteria in the procurement. It was mentioned a few times yesterday. We know, for example, in India, there are still some hesitation in some agency to use it or to still be convinced about its benefit. And this is where also we see in procurement training should be closely combined with experimentation. So, for example, we have here Shweta, who is head of, with another colleague of our CDRC, so Capacity Development Center, and we really try to have people who will experiment the week after what they are learning during the training. So it's very important that when you learn something, you experiment it. And for example, I'm convinced that one person will be convinced about the benefit of the MPC when this person will have used it. So there is also a lot in you can have all the training that you want, but if you don't experience things, it's very difficult to learn from that. So I think also experimenting is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. And with that, let me open up for the question and answer session. We already have a few questions coming in. So, Stefan, if I may have the first question, which is addressed to you. The question is from Mr. Sanjeevan Sanbi, who is Senior General Manager Contracts at Reliance Industry Limited. Question is, for building institutional capacity, which organogram works better? One, procurement function reporting to project or operation function, or two, which is procurement function as independent working parallel to project or operation function. Your views on that?
Thank you very much. It's a very good question. For me, I think it works better, as I mentioned, when you have an independent function. For example, in our organization, the procurement, so our chief procurement officer is reporting to a different department than what we call the sector department, who are operating the project on the day-to-day. So it's really ensure a very clear separation, no influence, complete independence of decision. And it's a perfect question because for me it's one enabling criteria. If you don't have that, I'm not saying it will not work, but if you have a very sensitive decision to take, it will be more complicated because, of course, you may have a different influence in the process. So, in my view, again, it should be independent. Thank you.
I like to add my viewpoint on this. This is my focus on this advice to you all. Okay, the CPO, the procurement division, should report to the CEO. There are a lot of organizations are changing that now because I've been telling you all about risk-based sourcing, ESG compliance and all this. You have to be aligned with the CEO strategy. So the most successful organization I have seen so far is the CPO is reporting direct to the CEO, which is the correct alignment. So this is, from my point of view, advising a lot of different companies. So I just want to add that. Thank you, Robin.
And just a quick one.
Sorry, just to make clear, the question was, should the procurement report to the project function? Huh? So when I say it should be separate, of course, at the end of the day, it means that the procurement function will be under the highest management level in the organization. So if it's the CEO, it's the CEO. In our case, it will be the president. But voilà, my point is, it should not be under the project direction. It should be under the highest management function under the organization. So at the end of the day, is to say that it should have the same power. The CPO should have the same power as a project director or an executive director. This is what. Okay, thanks.
Maybe just to add just a quick one. I think yesterday the point was made that procurement has moved from behind the door to in front. So as long as it is within the executive functions, the reporting functions are also important, but it must also not necessarily be on the lower rank, but on the higher executives where it reports to the CEO or the head of the institution. Thanks.
Yes, I think that's an important reflection that procurement as a function deserves a table at the highest level, deserves a seat at the highest level, because there is so much to be contributed by the procurement when it comes to the value addition. So having CPO reporting to Chief Executive Officer or head of the institute delivers a lot on that mandate. It provides that empowerment to do the value addition. And at the same time, I think the integration is key with the technical team, with the project teams, because both have to go hand in hand. So thank you very much for the reflection on that. The next question I have is addressed to Mr. Jonathan Cheung. And this question is coming from Mr. Fazal Rahman, who is Senior Manager Contracts at Indian Oil Corporation Limited. The question is, how can institutions align talent development, governance framework, and digital systems to sustain professional excellence in procurement? How these three enablers, talent development, governance framework, and digital systems can come together to help achieving professional excellence in procurement? Over to you, John.
Wow. What a question before lunch. Okay. So, I think I can say one more time. Okay. Is one of the things that, is a global standard with talents in there, and you need to encourage your talent to be able to understand the trend, clever use of AI technology to help you to understand what are the stuff, because some of this stuff you can't teach. Even I can't teach you in the classroom. It have to be very active understanding the trend. From a supply management standpoint, you need to understand how this impact, as simple as the supply chain disruption at the moment. We don't know whether the Iran war is coming soon and all this. So how do you get your team ready? That is the way I would like to answer this question. There are no classroom training can do this. So it's down to this theme of this segment is capacity building. So how do you clever use technology as an enabler to get your team ready for a agile way of doing? Because we procurement are very good in logical structure, but we won't be able to do that anymore. So now use your tools. As I say in my yesterday comment back to you all, is to say we become a crystal ball. We understood the trend. Well, you're supposed to understood the trend about your organization, so that you can react to any challenge come. So the key word is how to do procurement excellent is, you need to have the people, process, and system all align, integrate together. But we procurement have to drive that, because there's so many moving parts in all the organization. There are so many players, your stakeholder, your executive team, as well as your supplier side, the supply executive team. Then you are at the mercy on certain other third party to support you. So I hope I answered the question, but the remember is how to get all this done. You have to think of the agile way, which we procurement profession traditionally we don't do, because we have a playbook, we have all this, but you need to now rethink how to shape that. Then I need add one more comment. In the new world of agentic AI, in the new world, you as a procurement head or the CPO have an additional challenge, because now you're managing digital workforce, which is like an agent, as well as human, like our category management. So if you think about this, is going to be complex. So you need to really, I always say, you need to be 5 steps ahead of your stakeholder, because they will go to the respective conference and listen to all these exciting solutions that can solve and save money and all this. So you need to be 5 steps ahead of what they do. Then you can come back to say, I know how to do this procurement excellent. So this is how I answer the questions.
Yeah. Any reflections from the other members? Okay. So so I think if I can add my reflections to that, while, the question is very clear, but I think in the context of every organization, it has to be looked with a specific nuance. What actually qualifies as procurement excellence? Because for a particular institution who is responsible for maintaining the pharmaceutical supply chains, responsiveness is the real metrics for them. They cannot afford to have, shelves getting stock out. But on the other hand, if you are into, let's say, business of power generation, you have to make sure that the capital cost of the power plant is kept on the lower side, because eventually this will reflect into the tariff. So I think it has to come from the larger objective, what you are trying to achieve by way of procurement. And that defines the metrics for procurement excellence. And then all these enablers have to be oriented towards that, whether it is digital systems or whether it is the talent development and also the governance frameworks to support that. With that, let me move to the next question. This question is addressed to Ms. Sizi, and this question is coming from Mr. Sagar Jadhav, who is sub-engineer with BMC. The question is, unlike private organization where procurement officers are promoted vertically, but in government setup, they are transferred regularly. That's why capacity building for government official is challenging. How to bring government officials on par with private sector? Any reflections on that, Sizi?
Thank you, Robin. Yes, I think it is a fact. I think it also does align to say, let's not capacitate generally just individuals. Let's look at broader capacitation, because it's a fact, we do not have control in terms of the human turnover. When staff turnover, when people would see perhaps that the private sector is more lucrative, and then they would sort of go, which is why we also in our professionalization strategy, we have issues in terms of career pathing. Yes, in any organization, like my colleagues here, Jonathan has also mentioned that the CPO reports to the head of the unit. I mean, in my department, there is only one CPO, there's only one Director General. So it is a funnel. I always call it a funnel, an inverted one, because we all come in and then it becomes sort of kind of smaller. But what we can do, we could try and have a number of incentives, a number of areas where we do career pathing, a number of areas where we do those interrelations and look at our retention and career pathing policies that will talk to making staff to want to stay. I mean, I think 2 weeks ago we had a strat plan, and we're just talking about what are the other issues, seeing that government tends to have its own policies. What do you do about your employees? Do you ever just think about giving them some benefits, like when they've done a very good report or a very good project, you just give them out of their normal leave days, a half a day or a leave day to just go and do their other things. The incentives are not only monetary, they are also, I mean, I'm here now and I'm a government official, and in the private sector, they do also have their conferences and everything. But for me, it is an incentive, and it is also something to be looked upon by other officials. In fact, I mean, if it were not necessarily for my CPO, and generally our internal discussions, I did say that maybe someone else should go, because I had gone to another learning journey in Brazil. But because I had the professionalization project and this capacity building, I think it was prudent that I should come. So we should create an environment that we do know that there is delineation between private sector incentives and public sector incentives. And there are people that you must just take care of, your human capital, that says, I want to be what is it? A career public servant or public official. So identify them, create opportunities around them, create incentives that are within the government budget. We can't compete with the private sector. I hope I've tried to address the question. Thank you.